Hey guys, and welcome to this week's episode of the In Between podcast with Paige Allen. This is episode number 17, and today I'm just sitting in front of you and talking to you a little bit about Lent. It's a shorter episode today, so you can just settle in for a few minutes as I explain the basics behind Lent, and then a little bit about my own journey of how I've slowly incorporated this liturgical practice into my own faith walk. I hope today inspires you and just in any way possible brings you a little bit closer in your relationship with the Lord. All right, enjoy. Hi, you guys, and welcome to the next episode of the In Between podcast. It is obviously just me today, and so I am anxious to see how this all works out, but I've got to tell you, I was so pleasantly surprised when I put out the question asking if anyone would be interested in learning a little bit about Lent, specifically because today is Ash Wednesday, which is when Lent begins. And it's become something that's become a little bit of a practice in my own life. And I just want to share a little bit about what that looks like for me, because I think it might be something that some of you maybe want to consider incorporating in your own life. And so I'm really excited. I'm just going to jump right in. I'm going to try to make this a pretty short kind of like teaching time. There is going to be a lot of resources at the In Between podcast blog. So be sure and check there for details about the different things that I'm going to talk about today. So first of all, I just kind of want to talk about the basics of Lent, because I don't know if you're like me, but I started kind of, and I need to qualify all of this to say halfway observing, just kind of dabbling, trying to figure out what Lent was all about. I started doing that probably about 5 years ago. And if you're like me, 5 years ago, I literally knew nothing about Lent. I had started to hear of some friends of mine that I respected that were observing Lent and was learning about how it was really just adding to their walk with the Lord. And so it interested me. So first of all, I just want to kind of give you some basics, okay? So you can understand what it's about. First of all, it's 47 days. People wonder sometimes, how long is it? And I will say this, it is long. It really is. So there are 40 days, which 40 is a fairly significant number throughout Scripture, 40 weekdays, but then there are an additional 7 Sundays from when Lent begins, which is on Ash Wednesday, all the way until Easter. And so the thought is that you fast something during the 40 normal days, and then each Sunday is considered a feast day. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And the whole concept behind Lent is that it is leading us into celebration of Christ's resurrection, and just really getting our eyes to focus on what he did on the cross. People have asked me, like, Paige, why are you even thinking about this? Is it in the Bible? When I say up front, it's not. It's not in the Bible, and because of that, I definitely think it's not something that we have to do. It really is just a preference if you feel like it's something that might add something to your faith. But when I say up front, it is not something that is required. If you come from a Catholic background, maybe it was required in the Catholic Church, but it's not in Scripture, therefore it's not required. Instead, it kind of started with the early church, specifically the Council of Nicaea. They created and instituted a lot of different things, and one of them was the celebration of Lent. When I was in seminary, probably one of my favorite things is when I got to study church history. And church history just was so fascinating to me. There were amazing, wonderful things, and then there were horrific things that we have done as believers over the course of our history. But what I really loved when I was studying church history, there were a lot of things, but one of them, things that I loved was just kind of having this realization that my faith, it's literally tied to all of these different people. Like what I believe today and the way I learn at my church today, it literally goes back to different decisions that have been made over the course of time and over the course of the church. And so that's when Lent started, was in the early church at the Council of Nicaea. They kind of instituted it then. I feel like Lent is basically an intentional practice to get your focus on what Jesus is doing on the cross and through his resurrection. It's not, I think you have to be careful if you try to over spiritualize it, or if you make it something more than what it is. For me, it's kind of like a season of slowing down and getting my focus where it needs to be. I don't know if you're like me, but my whole kind of relationship with Lent actually began, like I said, about 5 years ago. I had just finished taking a sabbatical. I had been working at a church for 7 years, and I honestly was at a place where I went in to my boss and said, I either need to take a sabbatical or I might just quit, because I was burnt out. And over the course of my sabbatical, what I realized was the reason I was burnt out is because of me. It's because I said yes to way too many things. I was trying to prove myself and perform for people around me. And somewhere in those 7 years of working on a church staff and going to seminary and just working so hard for the kingdom of God, I really had lost that intimacy with the Lord. And over the course of my sabbatical, it was like I reconnected to him. But when I came back to working at the church, and because I work at a non-denominational charismatic church, anything liturgical was so foreign to me. But what I discovered was when I came back, because my church life still looked the way it always had, and I felt a little bit of dryness there because of my own issues. I started just kind of asking God, Lord, I need to know you. Like I need a new way to relate to you. It felt like every sermon that I heard, I already knew the next 2 points that they were going to make, just because I was such a church kid. And yeah, I was the church kid in this little segment. And so I was kind of in that season of just like that journey and that searching of, God, I've started to reconnect to you. I don't want to lose that connection by getting sucked into that performance. And hear this, like what I see is so many people have come into our church from more traditional or liturgical or even Catholic backgrounds. And when they come into our church, that's this charismatic, non-denominational thing, it's so fresh for them. And they so meet the Lord there that it like reignites the relation with the Lord. And I guess I was a little bit on the flip side of that. And I was still meeting God at church, and I was still loving to worship him with abandon, but I just needed something to reignite my relationship with him. And so after my sabbatical, I started really kind of researching a little bit about the liturgical practices and kind of was just saying, Lord, I've got to be more intentional and more disciplined in my relationship with you. And so I just decided, literally, I think it was on a Monday, the Monday before Ash Wednesday, I told Josh, I said, so yeah, I think I'm going to practice Lent this year. And he was kind of like, okay, I mean, what does that mean for me? And I was like, it doesn't mean anything. I just want to let you know. I'm not gonna make a big deal about it. I'm just gonna do it. And I decided that Monday, like, okay, if I'm gonna do it, like, I'm gonna do it for real. Like, I'm just gonna really explore it, see what's going on. And so that Wednesday, I went to an Ash Wednesday service. I went to a really traditional Presbyterian church here in town. I will never forget this. I was already a mom to Sayla, so I left her at home with Josh. Or they were actually going to church, I think. And I just said, I'm gonna sneak away and I'm gonna go to the service. Didn't really tell many people about it. I went in, I sat on the back. I was pretty much the youngest person there by a good 20 to 30 years. And it was like when I walked in, all the heads, just like swiveled and looked at me. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I feel so uncomfortable. But what I remember is I started to look around and I realized these people, like, their faith looks different than mine, but their love for God is just as real as my love is for him. And I remember listening to the minister, and he's in his full robes, and he has the ashes in front of him, and he really gave this sermon. I don't remember a lot of it, but I just remember him talking about, we were created from the dust. Adam, he was literally created from the dust of the earth. And when we die, we go back to dust. And he said, so the whole point of Ash Wednesday, and the whole reason we're going to give you ashes on your head, is sometimes we need to be reminded that we are but flesh and we are but dust. And with that kind of thought, which I knew, but it's like I didn't, I guess that's kind of what Lent has become for me, is a reminder of how much I need Jesus. Because I will confess that there are a lot of times in my life where things are going good, and I'm a pretty good girl, and do all the things I'm supposed to do. And if I'm not careful, I can get a little bit confident, a little bit in control. And I probably wouldn't voice it, but I live in such a way as if I don't really need him. I mean, I do. I say little, Hail Mary prayers here and there. Like, come on, God, I need your help right now, right now. But do I actually remember that I'm just a human, and my power is limited, and it's only because of the work of Jesus Christ on the cross that anything good is in my life. And so from that day forward, I would say that's what Lent has been for me. It is an intentional discipline leading up to Easter of saying, God, I want to remember that I need you, and you are in control, and you are the giver of my life. One of my favorite songs that our worship team sings right now is by All Sons and Daughters, and it talks about it's your breath in our lungs. And so the way I've incorporated Lent into my life these last 5 years is I take these 47 days and I really decide I'm going to fast something. And I want to encourage you to be cautious. Like, one year I kind of got sucked into the trap of, okay, I need to lose some weight, so yeah, I'm going to fast some food. Like, it cannot be about self-help. But I was listening to a podcast by Annie F. Downs and the two girls who write She Reads Truth, and they said this: fast from a delight, because during the season of Lent, you want to remind yourself that Jesus is your delight. And so, I'll sometimes just fast from sugar or caffeine or, social media or television, or what is that thing that, basically has just taken a wrong place in your life. If it is taking away from your time with him, or for me, there was a season in my life where I would turn to social media to kind of get some validation, honestly. And so it had taken a wrong place and a wrong position in my life, and I needed to fast it. I'll just tell y'all right now, because maybe this will hold me accountable. This year, you know what I'm going to fast? I'm going to fast my first hour of sleep, because I've been going through a season of grief, and I got really tired, which I think is normal, but I have been sleeping a lot, and my heart desires to spend more time with the Lord. So I'm going to set my alarm 1 hour earlier than what I normally would, and I'm determined not to hit the snooze button and just get up and really spend some time with the Lord. I think what's really good and can help us in the season of Lent is if we find some sort of reading program or reading guide or study thing that you can do during that time. This year I'm doing the She Reads Truth study, which is on the book of Isaiah. But there's a lot of online free guides. I'll put several resources down in the blog. And so what I do is 40 days I fast, and I try to replace that with time with the Lord. And then every Sunday, though, it's a feast day. It is a reminder, I am but flesh, but I have a living God who lives inside of me. And like I said, it looks different every year. But for me, as I love Sarah Bessie, she also grew up as a charismatic, and she calls herself a happy, clappy charismatic, and I so relate to that. For me, as a happy, clappy charismatic who only wants to focus on, yay, Jesus, he can do everything. And I want you to know, I believe that 100%. But as someone who has a tendency to just focus on that and not the reality of, Jesus, like, I need you. This has been really good for me. That's what it is. It's just a season, and I don't get mopey around people that I know. It's really just something that I do for me personally, but it's a season of day in and day out saying, I am but dust. You are a great God. God, help me today remember how much I need you, and God, you knew how much we needed you, and you loved us so much that you sent your son, Jesus Christ, who lived and walked on this earth, but then he willingly chose to give his life so that I can have that intimate relationship with you that I so need and I so desire. So that's what Lent is for me. It's really not rocket science, but it has enriched my life. And so here's what I'm going to do. This next week, I'm opening up questions. If you have specific questions, I know I didn't answer a lot of things, feel free to shout them out on Instagram or Facebook. Let's talk about incorporating some of these ancient practices just to kind of re-energize our faith if that's something that you need. Okay, with that, you guys have a great week, and I'll see you back next time on the In-Between. Thanks so much for listening this week. I hope our discussion about Lent has just kind of made you think a little bit. If nothing else, I just want to encourage you to be more intentional in your relationship and walk with the Lord. Hey, also be sure to head on over to the blog today. It's on our website at thein-between.com, where I'll have a full list of resources of different things that I've used over the years to help in my own practice of Lent. Also, if you have some questions, because I know for a lot of us, Lent is kind of interesting and new and weird, be sure to send those in to me through our Facebook page or our Instagram page. I'd love to hear from you. And last but not least, be sure you're subscribing. You can subscribe to the website, our YouTube channel, or on iTunes. All right, I'll see you next week.